Hi and welcome to day 2 of Dot Watches. Last time I checked in with you, we were 16 hours into the race and just coming into dawn of the first morning. At that stage, we just had the lead teams finishing up the leg 4 big trek through Teton National Park. The leaders were about 15 and a half hours into the race. They were Seagate, but the top 6 teams were only separated by a total of 33 minutes at that stage. The fastest predicted time was going to be 17 and a half hours to this point, so these teams were coming well and truly a couple of hours underneath that. So after Seagate, in a tight pack 17 minutes later was the Swedish Armed Forces team, the other Swedish team Hägglöf Silver, and the Americans Adventure Medical Kits, all in a tight bunch. And then only another 10 minutes after that, the American team Teton Adventure Races in 5th place. And then NatureX, a French team, a little bit half an hour after Seagate. So there's still teams out on this trek. We are now 33 hours, give or take, into the race. As you can see, the field is definitely spread out, and so there's teams still hiking up along those ridge lines, but we'll get into those teams a little bit more in a moment. After the leg 4 trek leg, we're followed by the leg 5 bike leg. The majority of this leg was paved at the start, but then it got a little bit trickier at the end. So really fast riding at the start, but towards the end, reportedly there was some hiker bike sections and some trickier navigation. So yeah, the 2 Swedish teams and Adventure Medical Kits hit the start of this bike leg together. Apparently they formed a bit of a pace line, riding at quite a quick pace and hoping to close down the gap to Seagate slightly. At one point, Adventure Medical Kits stopped to punch the checkpoint, as they all did, and they got dropped by the 2 Swedish teams, so they're left by their own devices. Apparently checkpoint 5 started to give some teams a bit of trouble around this point, so it was the Swedish Armed Forces team must have missed punching it and had to go back to get it. But then later on at checkpoint 6, Adventure Medical Kits also reported overshooting the checkpoint and had to get back. So initially very fast, very easy riding, but after that it got a little bit trickier. Into their transition area, it actually took Seagate 7.5 hours to do this bike leg. Fastest predicted time was only 5.5 hours, so the 2-hour buffer which they built on those predicted times was eaten up just by this one bike leg. So at the end of the leg 5 bike leg, they'd been racing for a total of 23 hours. Other reports to come out of that transition area at the end of the bike leg were that it was actually really cold overnight and early morning. It's quite hard for teams to eat. They were that cold, but during the bike legs things really heated up. So reports are that all the top 5 teams, 6 teams, looked reasonably okay, but were obviously starting to feel the pace. Of all those top teams, apparently Hägglöf Silver were looking the strongest. The transition officials were also providing every single team out there with the cheeseburger and Coke, which apparently was very well received at that transition area. So after the leg 5 trek leg, we then hit what could be one of the crux legs of the race, and that was the big leg 6 trek. This trek is totaling 65 kilometres in length, which is equivalent to 40 miles, and it's predicted to take the lead teams about 14 hours. If we turn to the tracking system, we'll be able to analyse how things are travelling at the moment with them. You can see that Seagate has opened actually quite a sizable gap over 2nd and 3rd place, which is held down by both the Swedish teams, Hägglöf Silver, and the Swedish Armed Forces team. That gap's hovering around about the 2-hour mark. Interestingly, they've also elected to take a different route between checkpoints 9 and 10 than the 2nd and 3rd place and even the 4th place team. That 4th place team is the Adventure Medical Kits team. They're about another hour back behind the 2 Swedish teams. Apparently they reported at the previous transition area that they also intend to sleep at some point during this trek leg. From there, it's a tight bunch for 5th place. We have the 3 French teams, FMR, Loisirs Sports Nature, and NatureX, along with the Estonian Ace Adventure team. The Estonians are actually the real big movers in the race at the moment and are now battling it out for that 5th place. With the French teams, NatureX reported of having one sick member at the previous transition area. One of their male team members actually had to go have a sleep underneath a truck before they headed out, but obviously it's still not slowing them down too much because they're right up there at the pointy end of things. Moving past that little cluster, we have the Godzone Adventure team sitting in 9th place, and then also a tight little battle between Team Cyanosis and Black Hill Aparvanet, which are now battling it out for top 10. If we take a look at the local charge, so the top American teams, obviously Adventure Medical Kits in 4th place are leading that battle. We have a new competitors up the front, Untamed New England are the 2nd placed top American team. And then it's a close battle after that between another bunch of American teams, which include Yoga Slackers, MRC and Teton Adventure Racers. So the Yoga Slackers had a cracking little bike leg and managed to reel in about 5 different teams, whereas Teton Adventure Racers, who had come into that previous transition area in 5th place, are actually managing to slip back a bit. No reports really on what that is. Maybe they've stopped to rest up, maybe they've found the pace a little bit too quick, so let's hope all goes well for that team. If we move back through the rest of the field, you can see that teams are definitely spread out. Here are the infamous checkpoints 5 and 6 that have been giving some teams a bit of trouble on the bike leg. Moving right back through to the previous trek leg though, you can see that there are still a bunch of teams on that trek leg, and they're soon to finish up. You might remember in the last Dot Watcher segment we reported on the Uruguay Natural Sports team who are taking our off the map prize. You can see that they did indeed have a significant amount of difficulty dropping off that ridge line before relocating at a major road, following the valley up, climbing back onto the ridge line, and they seem to be doing well and have just hit the transition area. Our Lantern Rouge prize still is held down by, and I'll get the name right this time, Tall Dude and Dirt Skirt Sisters. So this is our last place team on the full course, and still currently ranked. They've currently been on this trek leg for a total of 22 hours. Now the longest predicted time for this trek leg was 25 hours. You can see they've obviously stopped for a sleep here at some point, but they're probably only about 40% of the way through the leg, so things are not looking good for them to make the cutoff, but yeah, let's hope that the team's moving well and staying safe. Just on this trek leg, there's reports from Silver. Now that's Silver, the racer from the Stonian Ace Adventure, who said that a lot of the trekking in these ridge lines, while it looks simple on the map and it's just a track, it's actually quite hard to follow that track, particularly at night. So there's a lot of micro navigation involved, making sure that you stay on the track and trying to work your way around different obstacles. So that's a look at the tracking systems and where it stands now, approximately 33 hours into the race. Has been a few other bits of news to come out of the race, and that's a number of withdrawals. Probably the most high-profile withdrawal has come from Tiki Tours. Tiki Tour were the winners of the Godzone Adventure race. They've had a member who I believe George is sick with a chest infection, and the whole team is withdrawn from the race on the leg 4 trek. So a bit unfortunate for them. Hopefully they're all safe, and I'm sure they'll be missing the points that come from the World Championships as well to back up their Godzone win. There's also reports that Team 114, McGinley, has also retired. No news on what the issue has been there. Another team, Lupine, are now unranked. They've lost 2 members at the end of that big trek. The other 2 members are still keen to go on, but they need to find someone to trek with. Finally, Phoenix Multisport backtracking to checkpoint 7, so they've already gone on to that second big trek, but now they're backtracking because apparently one team member has a bladder infection. So all these reports are secondhand. I'm not on the ground, but this is the news that's filtered through to me, and so you can see that a day and a half into the race, it's starting to take its casualties. So what's to come for the rest of the race? Well, obviously for most teams, sleep at some point. None of the lead teams have taken a sleep yet. I imagine Seagate will be able to push through this current trek leg to the transition area. It's predicted to take about 14 hours. They've been on there for about 10 hours. So if they stick to predictions, they should wrap it up at around 2 a.m. on the second night of the race. Perfect time to have a sleep, and with a 2-hour buffer, that will work well for them. The other teams, as we said, A&K potentially sleeping out on the leg, and I imagine most of those other teams will have to make a call on where and when to sleep. After this point, next 24-hour racing, what do we expect to see? Well, a lot of biking. There's a total of 322 kilometres of biking to come, which is only split by a 7-kilometre roping section. As we said earlier, a lot of this riding is going to be quick, but we're still expected to take the bulk of the day to cover that distance. After that big bike leg, there's only about half a day of racing left then, some pack rafting and trekking. So still a lot of racing to come, but there's definitely been some big movements on day 2 of the Adventure Racing World Championships. Hopefully we'll be tracking back with you in about 24 hours time. In the meantime, please check out all the other links on the Adventure Racing World Series website, in particular the work Eric and Viv are doing with the Adventure Centre. I'll see you soon.